If you're looking for a quality chef and caterer for your next revival, conference, seminar, or wedding, then you need to get in touch with Minister Eugene Wims. He is a quality chef and caterer that walks in the Lord. Call him at 754-422-4780. And don't forget, you can join Minister Eugene Wims every Monday and Tuesday morning from 5 until 6 a.m. with his radio ministry Walking by Faith right here on Wexy 1520, your inspiration station.
Well, good morning, South Florida. Good morning, Wexy 1520 family and friends. Well, it's Monday, and if it's Monday, then you know it's past our story time. I'm glad that you're here. I'm your host, Tyrone A. Ash, a local product right here from South Florida with worldly experiences, education, and knowledge with one important purpose, and that is how to save our children. I'm available at 954-854-9216. That number again is 954-854-9216. My email address, if you want to drop me a line, question, or comment, is HYTY, the number 2, letter U, at gmail.com. That's hi to you. Our call, I just want to make you know that I'll talk about our sponsors a little later, but I want you to thank you again for the next hour, 60 minutes. You get the opportunity to journey into the power of our story. Remember, our story is the story of humanity. Our story goes from the first human on Earth, a fact proven by science and archaeology. It goes from the creation of civilization that includes math, science, art, medicine, farming, to building one of the 7 wonders of the world. That's the pyramid. Also to the oldest college you would find in the world in Timbuktu. Our story includes kings, queens, all the way up to the period of enslavement, which I call our dark ages. And yet, we fought through all of that enslavement right on to redeem our freedom once again. And we went through segregation, Jim Crow, you name it, all the way up to electing the most powerful man in the world in the 21st century. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that would be President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, a man of African descent. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, listening audience, of how our story is the story of humanity. And our story goes from the very first humans on Earth, like we said, all the way up to where we are today. So as you know, our purpose, want to make sure you know, our purpose for Pass Our Story is to increase your knowledge of self-history and ancestry for the quality character development for successful living. Ladies and gentlemen, this fact has been proven by scholars and is the conclusion of university studies on successful people. Their conclusion, after studying 100 successful businessmen and women, trying to figure out what characters do they have in common. Their conclusion was the common traits were knowledge of self-history and ancestry. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Was it nothing more than knowing about yourself and your ancestry? We want to thank you for tuning in. For you could be anywhere else, but you decided to get up out of bed, have your tea, have your coffee, and turn up your radio and listen to us at Pass Our Story. As I talk about our sponsors later on in the program, but right now, I need to introduce you to a special guest that we have here today, and I don't want to take no more of his time. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my friend, this warrior from times past and has still fighting on the front lines today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from New York City through Carbondale, now here we are in South Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Reggie Brown, a warrior, a former Black Panther Party member, and again, a fighter for truth and justice for the Black way. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Reggie Brown. Reggie, introduce yourself, please.
And good morning, Tyrone. Good morning, listening audience. Praise God for another day. Great to be here, and I appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk this morning to the listening audience. And it's some strange times that we're dealing with, but it's always been very important that we have knowledge of self and know where things began and how they began, and the truth about things is always very important. So I'm very grateful to have an opportunity to share part of my story.
Oh, I'm glad that you're here with us. I'm telling you, and you have a very interesting story. But we're going to get to all of that. We have a whole hour to do that. But what we want to do is, I called you a warrior. I called you a fighter for the freedom of people, especially people of color. Will you explain to the audience why I gave you those titles?
Sure. Well, right now I'm 71 years old. When I was a young man, actually a teenager, growing up in New York City, in Harlem, a real warrior, Malcolm X, was on the scene, and he had a very powerful impact on young people during the early 1960s. And he had a very powerful impact on me. He would speak to the people of Harlem on 125th Street, which was the main street in Harlem where people would be able to go and buy clothes and just see each other, bookstores and all kinds of things. But he did more than anyone I could think of to open people's eyes, not just black people, but open people's eyes to what was really going on during those days. And we're talking about time when it wasn't even a common thing to call our people black. During the 60s, we were known as Negro and colored people. But Malcolm, I think more than anyone, would put the word black in our vocabulary, and it is what it is. And Malcolm had a strong impact on me. He had no fear of telling the truth, and he did not mess around or pussyfoot with the thought of us having a right to be here, of us having a right to strive for a good life, but also having a right to defend ourselves. And he was very instrumental in giving the world an example of a black person who was proud of who they were, but also wasn't going to make excuses for taking a stand on issues that are confronted us on a daily basis.
Gotcha. Okay, well, just so our listening audience can keep up with us, when you talk about Malcolm X, there are two particular periods in the life of Malcolm X that we all have to take notice of. And part of that life you spoke about was when Malcolm was part of the Nation of Islam. Is that correct?
Yes, of course. Things were happening pretty fast during those days, and it seemed like before we knew it, there was there was a discord between Malcolm and the Nation of Islam, and Malcolm went on to leave the Nation of Islam and start a group called the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And during this period, I guess I was about 15 or 16 years old when, unfortunately, the Nation of Islam and Malcolm, the conflict got to such a boiling point. The next thing you know, Malcolm was assassinated at Upper West Side of Manhattan. And it was on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and it had a real heavy impact on especially young black people all over. But I know in my neighborhood, we used to listen to Malcolm's recordings, probably almost on a daily basis, and learn so much about standing for yourself and standing up. And it had a real strong impact on me, and I guess it was a calling, was what I would call it, because I felt very moved by all the things that Malcolm taught us. And at some point, I got the feeling and the spirit that, you know what, I'm going to do something about this personally. And I decided to take a closer look at another group called Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party was founded in Oakland, California in 1966 by Huey Newton. And the Black Panther Party started because of, I would say, police interaction in the black community of Oakland was not what it should have been, and the Black Panther Party decided to follow police activity to the point when there was a police call, they would hear it and they would follow the police to the particular incident.
Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that the Black Panther Party was making sure that security in the neighborhood was being checked by the brothers in the neighborhood?
Yep, I'm here to tell you that absolutely. They would pay, when a call would come in on the police van, they would follow the the police department, the police cars. They would follow them to the particular location and observe the interaction and the arrest or whatever you would want to call it. But the Black Panther Party was very concerned and took a stand about the way police interacted with people in the black community of Oakland, and the Black Panther Party began to develop what I would call offices in several of the cities of California, and eventually expanded to throughout the United States, at least in the urban areas for sure. Cities like New York City, Chicago, and
the Midwest, the northeastern states, right?
Yeah, mostly in the Northeast.
There's about 40 chapters nationally. I understand.
Yes, that's exactly right. It was it expanded pretty quickly, and at that time I was a student. I was a student at Southern Illinois University in a small town called Carbondale, Illinois, and I came home during summer break during the summer of 1967, and I made a decision. I said, you know what? I'm going to become a member of the Black Panther Party. And I went down to the office that the Black Panther Party had in Harlem on 123rd Street, 7th Avenue. And I went in, knocked on the door, went in, and I saw brothers talking to each other, brothers and sisters, educating people in the community, knowledge of self, and also Black Panther Party was put together a breakfast program to feed young children of the community of Harlem, and free breakfast. So the Black Panther Party had started doing human service work in the black community, but also teaching black people that they had a right to defend themselves, and the Second Amendment, which is, I think it's the Second Amendment, but the fact that we had a right to defend ourselves and also to arm ourselves, meaning
that's correct.
Legally purchase weapons, to defend one's home, etc.
And that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, because in my research, I found we had Black Panther chapters in the West, the Midwest, the Northeastern. But we're going to take a break. But when I come back, I'd like for you to tell me, how did a small town like Carbondale, Illinois, end up with a Black Panther chapter? Okay, so we're going to take us a quick break, and we'll come right back. Keep listening.
If you're looking for a quality chef and caterer for your next revival, conference, seminar, or wedding, then you need to get in touch with Minister Eugene Wims. He is a quality chef and caterer that walks in the Lord. Call him at 754-422-4780. And don't forget, you can join Minister Eugene Wims every Monday and Tuesday morning from 5 until 6 a.m. with his radio ministry Walking by Faith right here on WEXY 1520, your inspiration station.
Good morning, listening audience. This is Pass Our Story time again. I'm Tyrone Ash, and with me today is our special guest, Mr. Reggie Brown, former Black Panther member from Carbondale, Illinois chapter. Now, Reggie, before I ask you to answer that question about how did a small town like Carbondale get one, let me give my audience some background. And this background comes out of the story Grandpa told of American and world African legends and culture. Now, we're talking about the Black Panther Party and how it started. Let's remember now, during that same period, we're saying Black Panther Party started in 1966. Well, in 1964, we had major riots in urban cities. Sounds like today, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? A riot was in Harlem and expanded to the Bronx. That's what Mr. Brown is telling us. The Mississippi voters registration drive was making progress. That's down in the South. You remember that? There was a slogan that Stokely Carmichael popularized. The slogan, he worked with the voters registration drive. He was a member of the Civil Rights Organization. He was an activist. Carmichael became the leader of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And the focus of the organization was to change nonviolent actions to liberation under his leadership. Now, also remember, during this same period, we're talking about the 60s, early 60s, we had the Mississippi Freedom Democracy Party, which was composed of all Americans, and they challenged the delegation of the state, the delegates from Mississippi. Said, how can it be composed of all non-Africans? And they even worked to make sure that we could not vote. So how are you going to have this group represent us at the convention, and these the same people that tried to stop us from voting? But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, those are the kind of times that was going on. It was during those times that Miss Fannie Lou Townsend Hamer said her favorite statement, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're in 2020. I'm talking to a former Black Panther, and he's talking about how the Panther Party at the time was able to patrol and monitor their streets from the police. Now, Mr. Brown, I'm going to let you get back on the spot again. Why was the chapter created in Carbondale, small country college town in tip of Illinois?
When I joined the party during the summer of 1967 in Harlem, I knew that I was only going to be there during the summer, and I was actually a sophomore at Southern Illinois University. And that when summer ended, and at the end of August, that I would be going back to Carbondale. So I approached Field Marshal D.C., and I explained to him that I'm going to be heading back to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, but I'm going to be going back as a Black Panther. And he advised me that what I needed to do when I got to Illinois, before I got to Carbondale, was to stop in Chicago and meet with the Illinois chairman of the Black Panther Party, Brother Fred Hampton. And on my way back to school, when I stopped, I was on the, it wasn't called Amtrak then, but at the time it was the Illinois Central. And the train stopped in Chicago, and I got off the train and went to the Panther office on the west side of Chicago, which was at 2350 West Madison, on the west side of Chicago. And I made it up the steps and talked and met with someone that I feel is one of the most true warriors of the history of our people in the United States and anywhere, Brother Fred Hampton, who was eventually assassinated by the Chicago Police Department and the FBI at that time, because unfortunately the FBI thought that the Black Panther Party was an organization that needed to be stopped at all costs. But prior to the assassination of Fred, he met with me and he let me know that the state of Illinois did not have any chapters in the rural part of the state, which is the southern part of the state. As a matter of fact, at that time, nationally, there were no chapters outside of the major urban cities like New York, and Oakland, San Francisco, etc.
Okay.
But at any rate, he wanted me to put together what we call a cell, what I call a crew of people with like mind who I could recruit and develop a chapter of the Black Panther Party while a student at Southern Illinois. And I accepted the task that Fred put before me. I was already very active in the, so I was already active as a member of the Black Student Union at Southern Illinois University, and also very active in the Black community of Carbondale, which was northeast Carbondale. Carbondale, Illinois was a town of about 29,000 people. About 30, I think that Carbondale, Illinois was a town that had a university of about 29,000 people, and another, I would say, 20,000 residents. So it's a very rural area, surrounded by farms, coal mines, etc. Actually closer to Memphis, Tennessee than Chicago, Illinois. Extremely rural. At any rate, my task was to put together a crew that we could do and carry on the work of the Black Panther Party, which was had all developed into community service breakfast programs.
Yeah, I remember the free breakfast program. I remember the tutorial program. The audience saying, "What you mean you remember?" Yes, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tyrone Ash, was a student at SIU Carbondale, Illinois, during the time of the Black Panthers chapter existed there in Carbondale. So those were times when students came from the campus to volunteer to assist you all. Now, you were feeding young kids breakfast before they go to school to give them a better chance at being able to get that smarter, have more education, academics going on. You had free clinics. You were trying to give health education and services to young people. You was doing tutoring, making sure that after school kids had the kind of tutoring to help them get smarter. You providing the elderly with food stuff by having food giveaways. Seemed like you were doing all of these good services to support the community. What happened? Why all of these services turned so bad?
Well, I would say I'll put it to you like this. Well, I mean, I'm going to back up for a minute and say that I realized that to organize and put together a breakfast program in any community, and me being that I wasn't from Carbondale, I knew that I had to establish a bond with the people, the black people of Carbondale, and I realized that for me to be able to do that I would need to join a church, and I just to join the Mount Olivet Free Will Baptist Church. So I started attending there on Sunday, become familiar with people of the northeast side of Carbondale. And as a matter of fact, when I was a student, when I came back, I decided not to live on campus in campus housing. I went and rented. I looked for housing in the northeast section of Carbondale, and myself rented a room in one of the houses that were available for black students. But at any rate, so I decided, I put together a crew. It was a couple of people that I knew from when from working with the Black Student Union. I approached a couple of the individuals that I had become familiar and close with, and explained to them that I was a member of the Black Panther Party, and that I was working to put together a nice little crew that we could help organize the black community of Carbondale, and that's the northeast side of Carbondale, and also black students who attended Southern Illinois University who would be interested in doing work that would better the black community in the city of Carbondale. So it took extensive time. You know, you can't just get on a soapbox and say, "Hey, I want some people to join this organization with me," etc. So I took my time and kept my eyes open to a couple of people that I knew were good people and good students, etc. And I put together my crew, and it was actually, in the beginning, it was 5 of us, and we represented the Black Panther Party in Northeast Carbondale. We would, as a matter of fact, I went to the local AMP and New Era Dairy and some of the other local merchants, and I explained to them that we wanted to start a breakfast program, and we would need donations from the merchants of Carbondale so that we could feed breakfast to the children before they went to class. And it was kind of fascinating, the support that we got from the
It sounds like you did.
Yeah, I mean, so many. I give the credit to especially the young sisters, the young black women who are students at Southern Illinois University, who have volunteered their time and would show up at the church at 4 in the morning to fix breakfast, and it was mind-boggling that we were able to get donations to the extent of being able to feed 125 black kids hot breakfast every morning. And I'm not talking about cornflakes, etc. I'm talking about sisters from the community and from the university. We would fix grits, eggs, sausage, extraordinary healthy, nice breakfast.
Sounds good. Yes, I remember. Yeah. Very good. So now, with all of that good work that you was doing, I don't see anything that should have caused any concern or drawback for the community, the greater community at large. So what happened with that chapter?
Well, it was kind of fascinating in that the kids who we had, the kids were on their way to school, we must remember, but we were able to feed the kids, get them fed, and online by 7 in the morning. So and we didn't ask the school district to send a bus to the church. This was where all of the kids were. And so it was kind of fascinating in that the school district ended up being compelled to send a bus to the church. And when you affect the community in such a way where you don't go to the powers that be and request services or assistance, but they were compelled to have to send a bus to the church, and that intimidated them, of all things. When you can affect a change on a system where you're not asking or pleading or begging for a particular service or change, but they're compelled to respond to what you have created, and they felt intimidated by that because they were like, "Who are these people? Who are these?" Well, this was something new and I guess shocking to, unfortunately, to some of the powers that be, that we were able to unite the community in such a way. And it's kind of fascinating because the lies that were told about the Black Panther Party was such that lies were spread that we were indoctrinating the kids into being communists. Anything they could think of to try to discourage the Black
the good work that you were doing there in the community, right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
It just to discourage all of the good work that you all in the chapter was doing in the community.
Exactly. But
interesting.
Some people will, unfortunately, were affected by the misinformation, is what we call that was spread. But overall, the majority of the community, they did not fall. They did not fall for the misinformation, and they knew that what we had, one of the programs that we put together, the breakfast program was a powerful and effective and important tool because children perform better in school on a full stomach. And
right.
There were no breakfast programs. There were no breakfast programs in the United States feeding kids prior to going to school. But
So this was a Black Panther. This was a Black Panther creation then.
Yep. The reason there's breakfast in schools right now to this day is because the Black Panther Party put breakfast for children on the map. It did not exist in the United States. So it is something that the Black Panther Party was able to develop and develop an effective and on a large scale. So it's definitely one of the successes of the Black Panther Party was the breakfast.
So it's interesting that it's interesting that it's interesting how we talk about the good works and the social programs of the Black Panthers. And I could understand in Oakland how they were monitoring the police in the neighborhoods with armed patrol. But what happened with Carbondale? You was only doing a breakfast program that gave them such a threat that they had to come with bombs and violence to destroy their chapter?
Well, what had happened was one day in October of 1970, unfortunately, a Southern Illinois University police officer had got shot on campus. And the police claimed they traced the suspect who did the shooting. They claimed they traced him into the Northeast Carbondale to the house at our chapter of Black Panther Party, the house that we use for our residents, was it 401 North Washington in Northeast Carbondale. And they claim they chased the subject to that location, and as a result, the police from Carbondale Police, Southern Illinois University Police, Jackson County Police, State Police, the police from small communities of Murfreesboro, Herron, Culp, all converged on 401 North Washington and committed to shooting up the house with extreme intensity. And the house was occupied by about 5 of us. And the one thing that we always realized that, unfortunately, that is we would have, unfortunately, that there might come an occasion where we would have to defend ourselves. So we all had Illinois gun cards. In other words, we all exercised our constitutional right and our right as citizens of the state of Illinois to have Illinois gun cards so that we could purchase weapons to defend our home, and that's something that we of the Black Panther Party did at that time. And this shootout ballooned into an all-out what I call assault on Northeast Carbondale, actually, and this happened like at 4 in the morning, and during the shootout, I mean, the police used Thompson submachine guns, all kind of automatic weapons, tear gas, you name it. They would fire tear gas through the windows of the house, and then open fire with intense barrage of gunfire at the windows, hoping to eliminate the people on the inside. And the one thing that we realized early on is that this would definitely be a possibility of happening, unfortunately. But we did have gas masks and things that kept us alive with gas masks and a couple of cinder blocks in front of each window It's the only protection that existed to keep everybody alive. But
okay, now that carried me right to the point. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you say, well, why did you bring Mr. Reggie Brown on the show today? Well, I want you all to understand how close we are today to where he was and where we were back in the 60s. And so in capturing that moment, you put it in your story, in your book, and you named the book what, Mr. Brown?
A View from the Inside, on the front line of Afro-American liberation. I'm going to repeat that. A View from the Inside, on the front line of Afro-American liberation. And basically is really my life story, my autobiography, and the large part of that book is about what happened in me becoming a Black Panther and the resulting assault on 401 North Washington and what transpired is it's a fascinating situation because the people that lived in the area surrounding the house came out of their homes at 4 a.m. while the police were assaulting the house, shooting it up with all of these weapons, and marched down. Several of the members of the Northeast Carpenter marched down to the house at 4 a.m. and demanded that the police cease fire, and also demanded that the police would allow a couple of members of Northeast Carpenter to go in the house, bring out the Panthers who were in the house, and which is fascinating in itself because police departments do not ever turn over a assault to the community to bring out members of any armed action. They never turn it over to the community to resolve it peacefully, so to speak.
Okay.
But they did.
But let me stop you. All right, I'm glad to hear that. But before we get too far away, how does our listening audience get your book? We need to make sure we let them know that.
Oh, sure. It's my book was published by Southern Illinois University Press, and it is available at www.siupress.com. You can pull it up on the internet at www.siupress.com, and also available by telephone at 800-621-2736. 800-621-2736. That's a view from the inside.
Oh, view from the inside. Well, we keep talking about that. But we're just going to take a short break, and what we'd like for you to just think about as we come back, Mr. Brown, is how similar is these movements today that you can associate with those of your time in the past. So we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. Freshen up your cup. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for a quality chef and caterer for your next revival, conference, seminar, or wedding, then you need to get in touch with Minister Eugene Wims. He is a quality chef and caterer that walks in the Lord. Call him at 754-422-4780. And don't forget, you can join Minister Eugene Wims every Monday and Tuesday morning from 5 until 6 a.m. with his radio ministry, Walking by Faith, right here on WEXY 1520, your inspiration station.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, once again, we have former Black Panther member Reggie Brown with us, and we heard about his story, how he actually began the chapter there in Carbondale, Illinois, coming from his young training there in New York. Now, we know that there was the Freedom Riders, the summer voting campaign in the South, the riots that was going on in California out west, same thing with the Republican Party in Chicago in '68. So there were many different things, different type of conflicts going on in America during that time. That happened during the same time when the raid took place there in Carbondale. So now, when you look at where we were then and where we are now with the demonstration, what do you see that's common, contrast, or different?
Well, it's I'll tell you what is very similar in that when we were organizing, when my crew that I put together that ended up becoming the Carbondale chapter of the Black Panther Party, one thing that was very similar to now is that the support that we got from the white community and in the form mostly of what would consider young white radicals, college students, and what we call them, the young whites who were against racial injustice and the Vietnam War. We call them mother country radicals. That's the term that we gave to the young whites who were concerned about racial injustice and the Vietnam War. The support that they gave the struggle, the support they gave the Black Panther Party during those times was nothing less than phenomenal. I mean, they really got busy, and their support was genuine and 24 karat. The support we got from the student government at Southern Illinois University, that was obviously the student government was young white college students who were in the student government, and they had access to the resources of the university, and we were able to utilize many of the resources of the university in the work that we were doing in Carbondale. And so you asked me what was the differences or what were the similarities. Well, I can tell you that one of the things that was similar is that anytime you have a popular movement of any kind that's trying to make change to something going on in society, the powers that be will put out misinformation. One of the biggest tools of powers that be is misinformation, to put out lies, to confuse and clutter the environment with distortions of truth, distortion of event, and it's happening also right now with the unfortunate loss of life that has taken place primarily this year, but it's been going on. It never stopped from the time that I was involved in the struggle up to now. What's been going on, unfortunately, in our communities is the actions of some of the members of the various police departments is totally unacceptable. It's criminal, actually, and So one of the things that you see happening now is that a lot of misinformation about the people in Black Lives Matter, a lot of distortions of truth, trying to lump everybody into one category.
Okay. So that's like we hear the news where they talk about the looters more than the protests.
Exactly.
It's all about that kind of a thing.
Exactly. I mean, you know, basically an insurrection is what you find that has happened across the United States. It's basically what I would call an insurrection, and when the reaction of the community to these deaths is really what I call a popular insurrection, the unwillingness to accept the actions of some members of the of various police departments, and of course there are members of any society or community that will take advantage of opportunities to to loot and plunder, steal,
That's
rob, and that's just part of society. There's always going to be people who look for opportunities to get over, so to speak, and unfortunately, the popular movement will get distorted by the actions of people who have nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter or any other organization that is opposed to some of the actions of members of various police departments.
Okay, but one of the biggest common elements between your time period and today, that common element, and I heard you say it. I just want to say it so the audience can hear it. It's the young people. The young people are the ones that's out there in the streets. We're glad to see our generation out there with them. But the majority of the protesters are the young people. And changes in America have always come at the hands of the young people pushing the country forward toward progressive means. So we want to thank you, Mr. Brown. We want to thank you for this insight you gave us from the Panthers, even though they were trying to do a lot of social good for the betterment of the black community, which would have supported the betterment of the whole community. You still ran into trouble. So now, today, we have trouble simply because unarmed black men are being killed. And so we still have trouble. So maybe eventually this country will get it right. So now I'm going to let you have the last word there, Mr. Brown, Mr. Reggie Brown, former Black Panther, creator of the chapter at the Carbondale, Illinois branch. Give us your final words for the day.
Well, I'm a child of God. I want to say I hope and pray that justice will eventually prevail for all of us. I'm going to leave you with a couple of slogans from the Panther Party from back in the day, and that one that comes to my mind is no investigation, no right to speak. And what I mean by that is before you make statements and comments about certain things, take a look and make sure you got your information right. One other slogan that I still hold on to dearly over these years, and it's seize, S-E-I-Z-E, seize the time. And you see that that's what is happening across this country. And my final comments are, what's fascinating to me is how the young whites have even brought their kids to the forefront in their marching and demonstrations and it's just fascinating. And I just see the Spirit of God in action, to see so many people who have come together to let this country know that we want change and we want it now. And I thank your listening audience for allowing me to share my story. And I thank you, Brother Tyrone, for allowing me to come on the program this morning.
You got it, Reggie, and that's Reggie Brown. He's the author of A Look from the Inside. And so you got an intimate view from the inside, ladies and gentlemen. And you can find his book right there at www.siupress.com. SIUPRESS.com. That's www.siupress.com. A Look from the Inside. Remember, you can also order by phone 800-621-2736. And so this is how
from the inside. Excuse me, sir. A view from the inside.
A view from the inside. Ladies and gentlemen, a view from the inside. And yes, you gave us our own personal view this morning, Mr. Brown. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As you know, on our program, you're quite welcome. And we'll have you back again for sure, believe that. So before we go, ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want you to understand and want you to go and also look at the story Grandpa told of American World African Legends and Culture. Remember, our program, Pass Our Story, is designed for you to increase your knowledge of self-history and ancestry. Our children need that. Why do our children need that? Because when you look at our society, and if the successful people know their culture and they know their history, well, maybe that's why our communities are not as strong as theirs, because we need to know our self-history and our ancestry. So, Reggie Brown helped us with his view. We're saying, go to the story Grandpa told. Remember, we're saying you can have your kids excite their passion with Ashanti cultural arts. We're saying you could go to 1000heroes.net to incite your young men on how to become better men. All of this is happening, ladies and gentlemen, right here on 1520 WEXY AM, Pass Our Story. And what's our motto? If it's Monday morning, it's Pass Our Story time. We do thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in, and we look forward to being back with you next Monday. Remember, Pass Our Story. Have a great time, ladies and gentlemen, during this week, and we'll talk to you later. Love you all. Bye now.
If you're looking for a quality chef and caterer for your next revival, conference, seminar, or wedding, then you need to get in touch with Minister Eugene Wims. He is a quality chef and caterer that walks in the Lord. Call him at 754-422-4780. And don't forget, you can join Minister Eugene Wims every Monday and Tuesday morning from 5 until 6 a.m. with his radio ministry Walking by Faith right here on WEXY 1520, your inspiration station.